Singer-songwriter Kasim Sulton is best known for his stint in Utopia, along with Todd Rundgren, Roger Powell, and Willie Wilcox. The addition of Sulton to the Utopia lineup in 1976 added a powerful singing voice that helped define the band's sound as they evolved from a proggy collective to a tight four-piece unit. Sulton provided the lead vocals for the band's biggest commercial hit, Set Me Free, and the band built a loyal following of Utopians during their 10 years together, an era that produced 8 studio albums and saw the band criss-cross the country every year. In 2017, Sulton formed Kasim Sulton's Utopia for a series of sold-out shows featuring songs from the classic four-piece lineup of the band. Kasim is bringing the shows out again, this time with Gil Assayas on keyboards, who toured last year as part of Todd Rundgren's Utopia. Kasim Sulton's career goes well beyond his stint in Utopia, and it includes session and live work with Meatloaf, Cheap Trick, Hall & Oates, and Blue Oyster Cult, just to name a few. Kasim Sulton continues to perform in Todd Rundgren's live band and also finds time to record and perform his own solo material. When it comes to bringing people together, Kasim is one of the most accessible and fan-friendly artists around. A Facebook group, This Must Be Love, named after an early Kasim solo song, follows his career, and Kasim often interacts with fans doing live Facebook events and video updates from the road on his own page. There is so much more, but for now, sit back and enjoy a little bit of time getting to know one of the nicest guys in rock and roll, Kasim Sulton.
I've already thanked you once before when you got on the phone, but can't thank you enough. And you are certainly very close to the top, if not the top, of the artists who I've loved since I was a kid, and I've watched your career as both in different bands, and there's been so many of them that we can't even name them. And then of course your great solo career as well. You've got these Kasim Sulton's Utopia shows coming up, and I just want to use that as a starting point.
Sure.
I caught those shows earlier when you did them last year before the Todd Rundgren's Utopia tour, and was just blown away.
Yeah, you came down to the Daryl's house show, I think.
No, it was the night before. It was in Sellersville.
Oh, okay. Pardon me, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. Well, it amazes me how many fan names you remember. You seem to remember people even if you've only met them once. That's sort of that's a great thing, and that kind of talks about your ability to connect with people. This time you've got Gil Assayas out with you.
Yes.
So I guess first of all, I know you've told the story a little bit, but what was the impetus for the first series of shows, and then maybe if you could talk a little bit more about the second set and what's going to differentiate these shows from the first time that you were out?
What was the impetus for my first run of shows, which was, by the way, it was only 3 shows. I did Daryl's house, New York City, and Sellersville, Pennsylvania. So it wasn't really a quote unquote tour, but people like to say that it was a string of dates. Let's put it like that. In any case, what happened was, ever since the band Utopia that I was in, the 4-member Utopia, myself, Roger Powell, Willie Wilcox, and Todd, ever since we kind of finished our career as a band in 1986 was our last tour. The fans that I care so deeply about would constantly ask, "Are you guys ever getting back together again? Do you think you'll ever do a show again? Do you think you'll make a record? Have you spoken to Roger? Do you speak to Willie? Does Todd talk to Roger? The questions were always, like rapid succession. Are the bottom line was, are you ever going to do something again? And aside from the up until spring of last year, aside from the redo tour in in 1991,
92, yep.
Yeah, 92. There was really, we had spoken about it a few times, but there was really no plans for us to do another proper tour or a record or make some new music. And the band, not only to myself but to so many other people, was such an important part of their musical history, in terms of what you listen to, what you gravitate towards, what is important to you, what you go back to over the years and say, oh, I remember what I was doing when I heard that record. This is my favorite song. I remember that show, blah, blah, blah. I just felt that before too much more time had passed, that I would give a little something back to my loyal fans and put together a small show with myself and a couple of other musicians and just play some Utopia music. It was an extremely daunting task. It was, just selecting the material, selecting the material was hard enough. Learning it again was difficult, but I think all in all, it came off really well, and the shows that I had booked initially sold out, and I always thought that maybe I'll do this again after a while. We'll see. And then. And I guess it was August of last year. No, August of 2016 was when there was some serious talk about putting Utopia, or doing another Utopia tour with myself, Todd and Willie and Roger at first. Roger kindly said that he was in retirement and he really didn't want to deal with the rigors of being on the road, and it's not an easy life. Like, granted, and I always like to say I'm not dodging roadside bombs in Afghanistan, but it's it's grueling, and it's a little tough physically, and as we get a little bit older it gets tougher. And so Roger didn't feel that he was up to it, and fair enough. Then we had to find somebody else, and the rest is history. I'm just going over the minutia with you. Right. We did that tour in the spring, and then on the heels of that, I thought that before too much more time had passed, that I would do my band again. I would do my version of Utopia again. The thing that differentiates my version of Utopia from the proper version with Todd and Willie and Roger and Ralph Shuckett or whoever plays keyboards in that configuration is I tend to try to pick songs that really haven't been played before in concert, something that the fans would find interesting and unusual for a band to do. We did 10 records, or at least I was on 10 records with the band, and I think there was probably roughly 10 songs on each record, so that's about 100 songs. And out of those 100 songs, during the course of our touring life, from 76 to 86, I guess we probably played maybe 60 of them, so that leaves another 40 songs that have never been played live, and I'm just guessing, I'm just pulling numbers out of thin air. I'm sure somebody knows the exact amount and which ones we never did and which ones we tried once and never did again. But in any case, the point is that I like to mix it up a little bit. I don't sing just the songs that I performed on record or live. I do other people's songs. Like last time I did this, I did a Willie song and a Roger song and a bunch of Todd songs that he sang lead on. So I just like to, to keep it fresh and I'd say to keep an old band fresh, I guess. and that's going to be the set list on this new date. Now I have new dates coming up next month and at the beginning of March, and I'm going to be doing more new old songs that actually have never been performed before. So I'm not going to give away the set list because I would like people to come and see it, but there are a few songs that I know for a fact that Utopia has never performed live, and they happen to be some of my favorite songs too.
Wow. I mean, I know from seeing the other show, I think the thing that I shared with you at the time was just how in tune you were with sort of, I hate to use the term obscure because that's relative, but really in tune with sort of the fan favorite songs that may not have gotten the most airplay or been played on every tour. I mean, like you said, there's so many to pick and choose from, and I was blown away by I Will Wait. I think that's a song that the first time I heard it, really just touched me. And but again, like you said, there's so many songs that you almost can't win, because even on my end, I go, man, I really love to hear More Light or Love with a Thinker, but at some point you got to draw the line. I mean, where is that line? Is it because it's harder to perform the song, or just because you just run out of songs that you have to do?
Well, I mean, every show has an arc. It has a beginning, middle, and an end. And I think you want to choose songs that complement one another, that kind of fit in the overall scheme and the bigger picture. So it kind of behooves you to stay away from certain stuff. And for instance, as much as I enjoed playing Singing in the Glass Guitar, there's really, if I was doing an 8-week tour with stage sets and lighting and all that kind of stuff, maybe I might visit that at one point. But that really doesn't fit into a club setting, which is my venues. The venues that I play in are all clubs, and it's a particularly long song, so it would take up a tremendous amount of time in the set, and that takes away from doing other material that I'd like to visit. There are a couple of songs like that. I mean, do I ever picture myself doing 1 Million Monkeys? Nah, probably not. That was just an album cut that was, kind of tongue in cheek for whatever reason. Or Sunburst Finish, which was always a big favorite of mine to play live. That's just an incredibly difficult song. So there are songs that are not going to work in terms of what I'm doing with my show. And like I said, every show has a start and a middle and an end, and it's got it has to have a flow. So you want to pick songs that go together well, that people want to hear, and that you like too. That I like, and me as an artist like.
And in terms of Utopia's importance as a band to different people, I remember you did I think it may have been a video update or something when you were on the Don Felder tour, and you'd met the guys from Styx, and they were all saying, "Oh my gosh, you're the guy from Utopia." And there was a part of you that was humbled by that. But I mean, do you understand? I mean, I guess it was amazing music. I mean, are those types of things? I mean, are they still just kind of pinch me moments that there's people like a Tom Jennings, or a Tommy Shaw or whoever that really just love Kasim Sulton and Utopia?
I'll tell you what. A few years ago, I guess it was maybe about 4 years ago. I think Todd was out with Ringo, and I went to one of the shows in I think it was Easton, PA, and I went on stage after sound check. I got there a little early, and I was with my son. and we're just standing on stage. I was talking to Greg Bissonette and Richard Page and Steve Lukather came by, who's a good friend of mine, and Steve is a brilliant musician and guitar player, and he said to my son, he said, "Dude, your father is badass." and now Steve has been in Toto for, I don't know, maybe 35, 40 years, something like that. And I love Toto, and I grew up listening to their records and trying to cop the bass lines and play some of their songs in whatever capacity, just learning it, and to have Steve, say that to my son, unprovoked, just out of the clear blue. He didn't have to say that. That was just the best feeling in the whole world.
Yeah, I feel like in many ways you and Steve are kind of cut from the same cloth, and that you've appeared on so many albums. And I think part of the reason that you've been in demand as session musicians is because you're easy to work with. I mean, do you think that kind of goes a long way in terms of and very talented? I mean, I don't want to say that obviously they just pick somebody who's easy to work with. You got to have the talent that goes with it. But if it's two guys with the same level of talent and one's easier to work with, isn't the easier to work with guy always going to get the gig?
Yeah, I mean, it does. You do have to have a certain amount of talent, but I think at the end of the day, it's does he work well with others? And that really makes a big difference as to the amount of people that seek you out and want to work with you, because you're just nice to be around, and you give a good vibe to whatever project that you're working on. So I think that is a very important and integral part to having a well-rounded career. That you got to be able to be a nice guy, I guess. A good friend of mine, Kenny Aronoff, who plays with everybody, and he's a great drummer. He really is. But he's just the sweetest guy in the whole world. You just want to be around him, and I'm sure on some level that it's almost as important as your talent.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that too, in terms of promoting your career and being, an artist that has a dedicated fan base, that has served you very well as well. I mean, and not just in Utopia or Joan Jett or Hall & Oates or whoever, Meatloaf or whoever you've played with, but I think more importantly with your solo career, and that kind of leads me to, these videos that you've done, either that were posted on YouTube on the road, or even the stuff that you're doing now for the Kasim Sulton's Utopia shows. Was that kind of a conscious effort? Did somebody say to you, "Look, man, you've got the personality to put yourself out there like that, and it's really going to connect with people"? Because on my end, I love it. It makes me feel a very personal connection with you. It makes you, obviously shows your fans that you care as well. And how did that all just kind of evolve?
I think that the music business or music industry, however you want to describe it, has changed so radically over the last 20 years, 25 years, especially with the advent of social media, that you kind of have to have that one-on-one personal connection with your fan base, because that's just what you do. It's just what you do these days. It's not about, being ensconced in a studio for 6 months, creating a record and then putting it out there and with some huge marketing campaign behind it. It's so much more grassroots these days, and important that you maintain a connection with the fans on a personal level. For me, for an artist like me, who's kind of, I don't want to slot myself into like where I fall in terms of popularity with any one audience. But for my audience, the few thousand people that follow me regularly. I guess at the end of the day, it's just who I am. Now, does Mick Jagger do it? No, he doesn't have to. He's been doing this long enough that he really doesn't have to. Does McCartney do it? Yeah, he does, as a matter of fact, because it's just what you do these days. So a lot of people do it, and it's just that's what being a musician has kind of morphed into, is that the fan connection and maintaining it and keeping it vibrant, and also it makes people feel inclusive. These days, if you're working on a record, you're more apt to have somebody in the control room turn on your phone, take a video of me singing this lead vocal, or watch me put down this guitar part, and hey guys, this is my new record. It's 30 seconds of a song that they're going to hear completed in a few months. It just ties it all. It kind of ties us all together. As opposed to keeping an artist on a pedestal and not having any kind of personal communication with them other than the music.
Yeah, and I tell you, it's fun. One of my favorite stories from over the years of my seeing you is I took my youngs, at the time he was, I think, like 9 or 10 years old, and I jammed him up at the front row of a Liars tour, and he was falling asleep, and you were chucking guitar picks at him, and then at the end of the show you came out and played Thumb Wars with him and joked about how I was dragging the kid out to a show on a school night and keeping him awake. But it's weird in the sense that you now have this sort of, like you said, this pedestal where the meet and greets are $350, but you've always been a guy that's willing to stand in a lobby and shake everybody's hands. I mean, and you've done both. So, I mean, on some level, it must feel weird when you're doing the big paid meet and greets, because you're probably one of the, I don't know if I can put this out in the world, but you're probably one of the easiest musicians for any fan to meet if they set their mind to it.
I guess I don't know. I've not tried to meet very many musicians, but at the same token, I think that it kind of speaks to who I am and how I view my loyal fans and anybody who is kind enough to take a little bit of their hard-earned money and time out of their evening or day to come and see me perform. I feel a certain not a debt, but a certain amount of gratitude for that I'd like to acknowledge, and so I do that by going out and and spending a few minutes with each fan and shaking hands and remembering names and taking selfies and joking around. I think that's really important to me. Now, having said that, maybe if I was in a different position, if I was, say, someone like a Meatloaf, who is particularly, or when his career was vibrant, he didn't have time to do that. He was busy warming up for a show, or he really wasn't. He was friendly with the fans, but he didn't go out of his way to meet anyone or walk into a crowd and shake some hands. And maybe that's a poor analogy, because he's a sweetheart. He's a really sweet guy, and he cares deeply about his fans. But there's a level that you reach that prevents you from the one-on-one contact that I'm able to do, because I'm just not at that level. So in a way, the limited scope of my celebrity allows me to be a lot more accessible than if I were really famous. I guess that's a good way to put it.
Well, and maybe in Meatloaf's case, because I've heard a lot of people just vocally, if they just can't talk on show days before a show or talk afterwards, or maybe they are talkative and they're publicist or whoever or tour manager just is like, hey, save your voice for the show. And I know Meatloaf has always struggled vocally. I don't say that to be mean. I mean, it's just, it is what it is, but that would kind of preclude him from being able to talk with people. I mean, your voice, I think I mentioned to you, even this Kasim Sulton's Utopia tour, you're really handling a lot of vocals, but I can't remember. You said to me at Sellersville you had a cold and you weren't feeling well.
Yeah, I was really sick in Sellersville.
But I didn't hear it. I mean your voice always sounds great. I mean, I can tell that you're definitely very aware of that because it's you. But from a fan perspective, I've always been amazed at how well your voice has held up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I always wish that I sang better than I do, but I think that's probably, because that's just in my DNA. I think that Sellersville show was very, very difficult for me because I was sick and I did have a kind of a stuffed up head, and these shows that I'm putting together right now, or the show that I'm putting together right now, doesn't call for anybody else to sing. And the last time I did this, I had 2 keyboard players in the band, and Wade, who's a beautiful guy and a brilliant musician, he sang a couple of songs, and the drummer Andy sang he sang You Make Me Crazy. Wade sang Caravan and Feet Don't Fail Me Now. But this time around I am not doing not having anybody else sing. I'm singing the entire show by myself. I mean, there's background vocals, but nobody else is singing lead.
Well, that's great. I mean, honestly, you again, even just your material from the Utopia era, it's considering how few times you've been on the road since the band broke up. I mean, like you said, there's so many songs that haven't even been presented. It almost makes more sense to set aside Roger's and Willie's material so that at least we can, or I think you may be singing, like you did last time, a couple of songs that were sung by Todd or whoever.
Yeah, no, I'm doing Roger songs and Willie songs in this show.
That's awesome. Glad to hear it. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you're probably prepping for this tour and whatnot. And just throw you a couple other questions.
Sure.
Back to if we could go back to kind of the Utopia days, and I don't know that I've ever really heard you discuss it at great length when you left to become a solo artist. You worked with Bruce Fairbairn, and I think you've been overly critical of that album. I love that album from top to bottom, and he's gone on, and I mean, he did, Permanent Vacation, if I remember correctly, but of course Slippery When Wet, and so many different things like that. In terms of that album's popularity, do you think somebody may have dropped the ball in terms of promoting it? And B, what was the scenario when you came back to Utopia and that kind of the reception of the band when you said, hey man, I want to come back? And what got you to that point? Does that all make sense?
Those are 2 questions, 2 completely separate questions. I think that what happened with my first record, I had started a record with Roy Thomas Baker, and to be perfectly honest with you, to a fault, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to I didn't have the best material that I could have had. Was it okay? Yeah, it was all right. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't embarrassing, but my songs at that point weren't realized as they weren't as well crafted as they could have been, so I started the record with Roy Thomas Baker, and Roy didn't really like any of my demos, and so I was forced to start writing new songs on the spot, and that's just not the way that I work. I tend to take a very, very long time to complete a song, and I paint over every note and word and every chord change, and then the recording process just takes even longer. So Roy got a little impatient with me and dropped out of the project, and we at that point had already spent about $150,000 on the record, between hotels, air flights, studio costs, musicians, rent, gear rentals, Roy's advance, blah blah blah, this and that. So I was immediately $150,000 in the hole before Roy dropped out. Then when Roy dropped out, I interviewed some other producers, and I found Bruce, and Bruce was just one of the nicest guys on the planet, and he was very loving and caring with me as an artist, and allowed me to take my time and do things the way that I heard them. So when all was said and done, I loved working with Bruce, and it's very, very sad that he's not with us any longer. But I think I was into EMI for about $300,000 at that point. And when you're a new artist and you present a finished record to the record company, and it's that expensive, and this was in $1980 or $1981, so I'm sure if somebody did the math, it's probably about 3 times that now, close to $1 million maybe. The record company said, well, geez, look at how much money he spent on this record. It probably speaks for itself. We don't have to promote it. Besides the fact that he spent his entire budget twice on making it. So let's just throw it out there and see what happens. And I really didn't get a whole lot of promotional dollars, simply because I had spent so much making it. It was a weird time in the music business. There wasn't a lot of records being sold. I think if it wasn't for Kenny Rogers and Kim Carnes, EMI America would have been in serious trouble. And so I just kind of got thrown to the side. And in their defense, I understand. I really understand. Looking back, I know why that happened, and I'm okay with it. I'm not bitter or anything like that. If anything, I just wish the album was better. Now, when I speak to people like yourself and other people, and they say, "Oh, it was a great record," my response is, "I'm so glad you like it. I'm really happy that you like it. Do I have to like it too? No, I don't. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do like it and I appreciate it, but music is so subjective. It's what you like and what other people like are two different things. My son listens to EDM and thrash metal sometimes, and I just don't get that. I'm not a big rap fan. I appreciate hip hop, but I kind of don't like most of it. So when it comes to my music, that record was very, very important for me to do, because it showed me what I needed to do the next time. And so now on to your next question. If I can remember what it was. How did I go back to Utopia? After my record kind of fizzled, I decided that it was a very, very bad move to have left the band. Not for any monetary cause, but because I really needed to learn more. And I had, 3 of the best teachers in the world, Todd, Roger, and Willie. And there was more to learn before I ventured out on my own again. And so I came back and I asked them if they would possibly take me back. I think that I don't want to say who said what. If I I got anybody upset or if they were on the fence about whether to take me back. I do know that that poor Doug Howard was very upset that I wanted to come back, but he took it with grace and in stride, and I wound up coming back to the band, and I just I ensconced myself in all things Utopia, trying to be a really good band member and contribute to the band.
Yeah, and that's my favorite era, is those last 3 albums. The self-titled Oblivion and Play This, or POV, are just amazing.
Well, even before that, it was the Network record that I came back on.
Right. Yeah, and that's the first tour I saw. It was actually the Suits tour. That's how first time I saw you perform was in Rochester on Halloween, 1982, and that show was top to bottom. I mean, that set list and everything was just incredible.
Yeah, that was a great band. We really, really were a great band, and we worked well together. There was a really special chemistry that you only find once in a lifetime, and we found it. And unfortunately, it only lasted with me. It only lasted 10 years, but that's okay. At least I had it.
Yeah, absolutely, and the legacy is still there, and people still love the music. And bring it full circle and wrap it up, we'll get a chance to experience it on this upcoming tour. And it sounds like we're going to get some really, really cool deep cuts, along with some of the more popular cuts. I'm sure we'll hear "Set Me Free," which is, I guess, I call it the Kasim Sulton national anthem in a way. But. Yeah,
you'll always hear that. But you will hear some stuff that has never been performed before. There's at least, let me see, 1, 2, 3, about at least 4 songs that, or 3 or 4 songs that have never been performed live.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, again, Kasim, can't thank you enough. I'll be catching a show in Cleveland.
Oh, great.
Really looking forward to it. When you first announced it, I was just thoroughly excited, because the show in Sellersville, and even in spite of your cold, I was I actually teared up, because it had been that long since I'd seen that much Utopia music, even though I saw the Akron opening set. But it's a band that means a lot to a lot of us. Your solo music means a lot to a lot of us. So I guess from the Kasim Sulton fan world, thank you so much for everything you've done, and thank you for being you, just being a great guy, and even availing yourself today for this interview.
Oh, I will. I'll sign off with this. Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate it. You've been such a huge supporter and loyal fan over the years, and I really appreciate that. And I am working on new material right now as we speak. Plan on doing another record sometime along the through the year. I'll be working on it, and hopefully have something out early next year, or maybe even late this year. We don't know. But I am constantly writing and working on new stuff.
Oh, great. Well, that's not to sound trite, but that's music to my ears. So
yeah,
very much looking forward to it.
Okay, Tom.
All right, Kasim. Well, I'm sure I'll connect with you out in Cleveland, and stay warm.
Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Kasim.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed connecting with musician Kasim Sulton. Please consider reviewing this podcast in Apple iTunes. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast as well. If you have any questions, email me at tom, Thom, at caroniamediagroup.com. That's CARONIA mediagroup.com. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for more episodes of Music Connects People.
Don't fight it.